If you're looking for an online whiteboard, you've come to the right place. In this video, you'll find a review of the most known whiteboards, starting from the most simple ones and cheap ones, like Google Jamboard, Zoom Whiteboard or Microsoft Whiteboard, to the more advanced ones, like Miro, Mural or Klaxoon. Different whiteboards have different features for different uses. So I've created an evaluation sheet with all the criteria that I think you should take into consideration when choosing a whiteboard. And you can download this for free from my website. The link is in the description. In that evaluation sheet, you'll find also a list of all the whiteboards that I know that I'm not reviewing in this video. So let's get started. In this first part, I'll be reviewing Google Jamboard, Zoom Whiteboard and Microsoft Whiteboard. Whereas in the second part, I'll be reviewing Miro, Mural and Klaxoon. I'll start with the whiteboard that I totally missed in 2021. It is probably the most obvious one because it's free. Well, actually nothing is free, but you know what I mean. And that's Google Jamboard. You can access it from the list of your Google apps or go to jamboard.google.com. To create a new Jamboard, click on plus at the bottom right. The graphic user interface is clean, simple and also very black and white. The main control panel is in the middle left, then we have a few other options at the top left and then the sharing options at the top right. Let's start with the inking tools. By default, we have a pen, then there is a marker, highlighter and brush. And we have 6 available colors. Let's start by trying the pen. Then let's try the marker, this time in red, the highlighter in yellow, and the brush in green color. Seems to be maybe semi-transparent. Let's try to ink over something that I've already written. Indeed, it's transparent. So for writing on the whiteboard, maybe the marker is my preferred tool. The drawing experience is okay, but I miss a few features. I can't choose the thickness of the inking tool. Maybe a few more color options would have been nice. One of the biggest limitations of Google Jamboard is that the inking content can't be really modified, selected or moved around. In fact, if I select the Select tool and I try to select what I've just written, I can't do it. So there is nothing I can do on content that I've inked. I can't move it and I cannot even delete it at once. The only thing I can do is erase it. So let's look at the eraser tool. If I go over my inked text, we can see that the eraser works pixel by pixel. This is something that I actually like and is very useful if you're drawing something. Many other whiteboards don't offer this pixel by pixel erasing feature, but they only allow to erase the full stroke. So the eraser is good, but it would have been nice to have the option to select content and delete it all at once. The next tool is Select, but we've seen that it doesn't really work with inked content. So let's move on to the next feature, which is Sticky Note. By clicking on it, a new dialog box appears. In a sticky note, we can add text and we can choose the color. Let's keep the classic yellow and add some text. When we save a sticky note, it is placed on the Jamboard, but the dialog box remains active, which is useful if we want to add multiple sticky notes at once. So let me add a second one, and this time in pink color. The first thing we notice is that the inked content is on top of the sticky note and is semi-transparent. So let's see what we can do then with a sticky note. I can move it around, make it larger or smaller, and the text will follow it. I can rotate it, and that's pretty much it. I can't further format the text. Now the second sticky note is underneath the first one, but if I select Order and bring it to front, I'm able to position one object on top of the other. The next feature is Add Image. This is a nice one because it allows you to upload images from your drive, but also paste a URL, use your camera, or search images directly on Google. You can also upload images directly from your Google Drive or Google Photos. I'll look for a pen image and insert it. When the image is on the board, I can also resize it, rotate it, duplicate it, delete it, or also choose the order. Let me put it to the back. The next tool is the Shape tool. There are 8 available shapes. Let's make an ellipse and an arrow. We have a couple of formatting options available for shapes. That's the border color and also the fill color. The next tool is the text box. The text box can be enlarged or made smaller. For text, we have a few formatting options. We can select the size from display to caption. Let's make it a bit bigger. Then we can choose the font color. Let's do it green. And also the alignment. Let's do it in the middle. There are no other text formatting options, so I can't make it bold, italic, and I can't choose the font type, just to name a few. The last option of this toolbar is the laser. This is very handy if you're presenting your Jamboard. You can use it to highlight parts of the board without actually leaving inked content on it. The laser will disappear automatically after a couple of seconds. Now that we have all types of objects on the board, let's see what we can do with them. So let's go to the Select tool, and we can see that we can move them around, rotate them as we've seen already. But if I try to select multiple objects at the same time, for example with drag and drop, this is not possible. So the group selection limitation is not valid just for the inked content, but for any type of object on the board. In addition to it, objects cannot be locked on the whiteboard. Now there is almost no space left on the whiteboard, which brings me to what is one of the limitations of Google Jamboard according to me. That is the limited canvas size. Many whiteboards have an infinite canvas, but Google Jamboard doesn't. I think the reason behind it is because the board has been thought for teachers and it's trying to replicate as close as possible the features of a real physical whiteboard. So when one whiteboard is full, you have to go to a new one. In Google Jamboard, you do that by going to the center top and click on Expand Frame Bar. By clicking on plus, you basically add a new page to your whiteboard. These pages in Google Jamboard are called frames. You can create up to 20 frames in a Jamboard, and you can work on a frame just by selecting it from this pane. So now we have a blank canvas, and I'll use it to show you the next feature, which is Set Background. There are 6 options here with dots, lines, squares, etc. But what I find mostly interesting is the possibility to add an image as background. So for example, I can go to Google Image Search and search for a blackboard. Now I can pick the white color and start writing on my blackboard. This line is not very nice, so I can undo by Ctrl-Z on PC or just click this back arrow here. At the top right, we find the sharing options. By clicking on this button, we can present to a Google Meet meeting. So if you have a Google Meet in your calendar, it will show here, or you can present using a meeting code. By clicking on the 3 dots, we see that we can rename it, download it as PDF, save one frame as image, remove it, or make a copy. And the last button is Share. You can share it with people in groups. You can decide the access restrictions, and by clicking on the cogwheel, you can decide whether editors can change permissions and share, and whether viewers and commenters can see the option to download, print, and copy. When you share the whiteboard with someone, you can decide what rights this person has, and you have the choice between editor or viewer. So all in all, the Google Jamboard is a good starter whiteboard. First of all, it's free, and then it has some nice features, like the pixel-by-pixel eraser that can be very useful if you're focusing on drawing. Images can be inserted directly from Google Search, and they can be set as background. On the minus side, at least for me, the Google Jamboard doesn't have an infinite canvas, and it's not really thought for collaboration. There are no reactions, no voting, no templates. It's a good whiteboard with limited features that seems to be more useful to teachers than to business people. The focus is definitely not on collaboration, but rather on teachers who have to teach frontal lessons. The second whiteboard is the Zoom Whiteboard. This is the one that has changed the most in the past year. Until April 2022, the only available Zoom whiteboard was the built-in Zoom Meetings one. As I've been saying many times, it was really primitive and, for me, almost useless. But now Zoom has made a huge step forward and is playing in the same league as the Google Jamboard, or even better than the Microsoft Whiteboard. If Microsoft has a whiteboard that is fully integrated with Microsoft Teams, now Zoom has a whiteboard that is fully integrated into Zoom Meetings. The first thing to say is that Zoom Whiteboard, like Microsoft Whiteboard, have 2 versions, a web application and a desktop application, and they have slightly different features. This is something that I don't understand, but if you know more, please let me know in the comments below. The Zoom web application is the richer in terms of features, so I'll be reviewing that one. And if you're interested in a more thorough review, I have a dedicated video to it that I'm linking in the description below. The dashboard is pretty simple, and the Create New Whiteboard button is at the top right. A limitation of the Zoom free account is that you can create up to 3 whiteboards, a little bit like Miro or Mural. Actually, this limitation applies also to the first payment tier, which I find quite strange. Anyway, let me delete a whiteboard and let's create a new one. The look is very clean and simple. Let's start by exploring the tools. We have the selection tool and then the drawing tool. There is a pen option, highlighter option and 3 different thicknesses. Looking at the color, there are 8 preset options. Let's try the highlighter and move to the next tool, which is shape. We find 4 predefined shapes: rectangle, circle, diamond and triangle. In a shape we can insert text, and we have basic formatting options like bold, italic, underlined, alignment options, font size, and again the same 8 preset colors. There's only one font available. The object can be enlarged by drag and drop, and we have also a connector here. That's cool, it just duplicates the object and connects it to the previous one. There are also formatting options for the object. We can fill it. Let's change the color to red. Add transparency. Now if I move it on top of the other one, we can see the other one underneath. Outline, and we can also change the shape. Objects can be copied, pasted, duplicated. We have ordering options, and we can also delete them. The next tool is the line tool. Pretty straightforward with a simple line option, single arrow or double arrow. And there's the text tool with the same formatting that we saw before for the text in a shape. Let's make it larger and connect it. Now I didn't want to do this, but I have the option to undo. I actually wanted to keep the text, so let me redo. Make the text larger and now try to properly connect it to the text box. Now if I move the text box, the 2 objects will be connected. If we click on the connector, we see that we also have a few formatting options, like the size. We can modify the start, change the connector type, and also label it. And the label will appear on the connector. We can also change the end shape and the color. I'll do it blue. The next tool is the sticky note. We can insert sticky notes only one by one, and we can format it by aligning the text or changing the color. And then we have the usual object options. Let's make it bigger by drag and drop. We can also add an image from the hard drive. That's the logo of my remote presentation hero course. The next tool is the eraser. If we click on an object, we see that the only available eraser type is the stroke eraser. So there's not the possibility to erase pixel by pixel. The Zoom Whiteboard, similar to Google Jamboard, has a limited canvas. For me, this is probably the biggest limitation. And considering that the business audience is a big target for Zoom, I think that's probably the biggest weak point. You can zoom in up to 1000% or zoom out down to 10%. Similar to Google Jamboard, if you need more space, then you need to create a new page. In Jamboard, that was called a frame, whereas in Zoom, it's called a page. Up to 12 pages can be created, whereas Jamboard offered up to 20 pages. So let's click on plus, and the new page opens. Let's just add a shape. Now, if you want to navigate between pages, you have to go down here, and then select the page that you wish to go to. Here at the top, we find the Share button. We can invite collaborators and define their rights. They can be editors, commenters, or viewers. Here we can copy the link and then decide who can access. Close to the Share button, we find the Comment tool. Click on it and then release the cursor on the board where you want to place the comment. Other collaborators can continue the thread, and I think this can be a very useful feature. However, it doesn't look like you can attach a comment to an object, so if I now move this object, the comment will not move with it. Multiple objects can be selected at the same time, and the selected objects can be aligned, distributed horizontally or vertically. We can do a bulk color change, and we can group them. Clicking on the three dots, we have a few options. The two most interesting ones are export, and we can export the board in PDF or PNG format, and also lock board. By locking a board, you'll remove viewing access for everyone but the owners. If you unlock it, then you will reverse this action. The Zoom whiteboard is not necessarily linked to a Zoom meeting. It can be opened in a Zoom meeting, but then collaboration can continue asynchronously. To summarize, the Zoom whiteboard is a good whiteboard with some collaboration features. It has a modern look and a good user experience. If the previous version of the Zoom whiteboard could only be launched from within a Zoom meeting, now the new whiteboard is an independent product. It can be launched from a Zoom meeting, but it exists on its own. So collaboration can happen within a meeting, but also outside of the meeting in an asynchronous way. On the plus side, I think this is a good whiteboard to use if you're a Zoom user and you want to stay in the Zoom environment. It also offers some features of more advanced whiteboards, like connectors or reaction counting. On the minus side, the first thing is that there are two versions, a web application and a desktop application, and I still don't understand why these two are different. Then I'm not really convinced about the pricing scheme. Zoom offers a free plan with 3 available whiteboards, which is totally fine and comparable to any other whiteboard, but the 3 whiteboards limitation is also applied to the first payment plan, which I really think it's unfair. Another minus point of the Zoom whiteboard is that it has a limited canvas. If I can understand that for Google Jamboard that is more addressed to teachers, I don't understand why Zoom is not offering an infinite canvas, since its business audience is really huge. Another thing is that there are no templates, not even simple ones, and I think this is a disadvantage compared to the Microsoft Whiteboard. Speaking of which, let's move to the Microsoft Whiteboard. If you're liking this video, please subscribe to my channel and give it a like so more people will have the chance to watch it. Thank you. The Microsoft Whiteboard is a great whiteboard, probably the most advanced of those that I'm reviewing here. And actually it was even greater, I think, 1 year ago. But then Microsoft decided to release a new version. But the new version was worse than the previous one. It didn't work and it frustrated many people. So many people left it for other whiteboards, and in the meantime Microsoft is trying to fix it. They've already fixed many things and many more are to come. So let's review how the Microsoft Whiteboard looks today. The Microsoft Whiteboard is a good tool. And if you have a Microsoft 365 account, it's included in it, so it's definitely worth using. The first thing to be said, which is still puzzling me a little bit, is that there are 2 versions, a web one and a desktop one. They have some different features, with the web version being a little bit more advanced according to my opinion. That's why I'll be reviewing the web version here. Go to app.whiteboard.microsoft.com, and to create a new whiteboard, click on New Whiteboard. The main tools panel is as usual on the left. Here we find the selection tool. When activated, the inking tools appear at the top center, and at the top right we have the sharing options as well as advanced settings. So let's start from the basics. The first option is the select tool. We've done nothing yet, so there is nothing to select, and we'll go back to it in a second. The second tool is the inking tool. By default, the inking tool is active, so we see all these options here. But if we click on it again, then they will disappear. So let's start reviewing the different inking options. There are 3 types of pens. Let's start from the first one. We can define the pen thickness, color, with also some nice coloring options like this rainbow that I'll test in a second. Pen strokes can also be automatically formatted with an ending arrow or with a double arrow. So let's try it. I'll select blue and start writing. And let's do an arrow in red. Moving on to the second pen, actually we see that it's exactly the same, and that applies also to the third pen. That's very useful because it allows us to save different pens that we use often. Like I could save a first pen in black color and 4 thickness that I can use for writing, and then I can save a red color with thickness 5 that I'll use for arrows. And we can keep the third pen for ad hoc uses. The third inking tool is the highlighter, and also here we can choose thickness and color. Then there is the eraser, and also the Microsoft Whiteboard has the pixel by pixel eraser. Now I deleted the D in predefined, and I realized that I should have not done it, but I can always undo it. If I press Ctrl Z on my PC, nothing happens. But I have to go to the top and click the undo arrow. Another very appreciated tool of the Microsoft Whiteboard is the ruler. You can measure angles, and you can use it to draw straight lines with a certain inclination. And the last tool we find here is the lasso tool. With the lasso tool, we can select multiple objects at the same time. Once we have selected the group of objects, we can duplicate them, edit the alt text, and then order the object, but also lock in it. Now that it's locked, I cannot select it and move it anymore, whereas the 2 that is not locked, I can move it around. The next option is the Create menu. From here we can add nodes, single nodes with 12 available colors, or node grids to add multiple nodes at the same time. So let's start exploring what we can do with nodes and start from the single one. We can edit the text, however we cannot format the text. We can always change the color, so if we started with a certain color from here, but then we change our mind, we can still do that. We can delete it, copy it, edit alt text, and also for nodes, ordering them and locking them. One nice feature of the Microsoft Whiteboard is that you can add reactions. There are 4 different types of reaction, so let's give it a like. When someone reacts to a note, then the reaction will appear at the bottom. And if you hover over it, you'll see who has put that reaction and the total count of reactions that were given to that note. The Whiteboard doesn't have a proper voting system. However, using the reaction count could be a good workaround. Moving on to the note grid, we can give a title to it. Again, change the background color, and we can do that individually for each node of the grid. If we need more nodes, we can add them. Or if we have too many, we can delete them. With the whole node grid selected, we can copy-paste it and also order it or lock it. And each node on the grid has its own reaction count. The second object type is text. The font is more informal compared to other whiteboards, but it's nice. We can format the color, copy-paste it, edit alt text, and the usual other functions. There's only this font available, and the size can be modified by drag and drop. By going to the corner of the text box, we see that we can also rotate it. One thing that is missing, I think, is the formatting of the text box. We can't add an outline color and also not a background color. And let's move on to shapes. There are 12 shapes available. We can change the background color, the outline color, and the usual other formatting. And they can also be rotated. So if you need a text box with a background, a workaround is to use a shape and put it behind the text box. We've seen that we can give reactions to nodes. But there is also another option for reactions, which is the next tool that we find here. There are 8 types of reactions that can be used as objects to be placed anywhere on the whiteboard. So they don't just work for nodes, but for any object. So say I don't understand what's meant in this node grid, I just put a question mark here and I will resize it. This type of reactions, however, won't be counted automatically. We can also add images from your drive or from Bing search, with this function actually not being available right now, but coming soon. So let me add a picture from my device. Also, pictures can be resized, repositioned, and rotated. Since we're talking about adding images as file, let's jump to documents. In the Microsoft Whiteboard, we can add PDF or PowerPoint document as an image. However, be careful because you can only add documents from your OneDrive account and you can't just select them from your local drive. And let's now move to templates, which is actually a good feature of the Microsoft Whiteboard that is not offered by other whiteboards in the same league. Templates are grouped by topic: brainstorming, problem solving, design and research, etc. So let's look for a brainstorming one and let's add an affinity diagram. Each template has instructions and then a pre-populated fields that you can modify to your needs. The graphic aspect is pretty basic, but it definitely does the job. A big plus for Microsoft Whiteboard templates. Great, we've concluded the left tool panel. Now you may have already realized that this whiteboard is different, for example, compared to the Google Jamboard, because I've been adding content and moving on the whiteboard. The Microsoft Whiteboard has an infinite canvas. You can zoom in and out, and then move to the part of the whiteboard that is relevant to you. Let's see what other options we have. By clicking on Home, we go back to all our whiteboards, and we have the Undo Redo buttons, and here we can change the title of the whiteboard. So that's pretty straightforward. But what actually is more interesting can be found at the top right. Let's start from the Settings menu. The whiteboard can be exported as an image, and this second option is very useful. It's the Enhance Inked Shapes option. What does it mean? This means that if I draw a shape, for example, I like to draw a circle, the whiteboard recognizes that I wanted to draw a circle and beautifies my drawing. This works with circles, triangles, and squares. So now the inking has been beautified to a shape, but if we select the eraser, you can still erase it pixel by pixel. The next option is Format Background. You can choose different colors and different grid types. The last button is the Share one. You can copy the link and share it with your collaborators. Here actually I'm not able to find an option to change the editing rights. So it looks like that anyone I will share the whiteboard with will be able to edit it. All in all, the Microsoft Whiteboard is really good and the most advanced of the three that I've reviewed here. It has an infinite canvas, smart shapes, reactions, and templates. And not to forget, it's included in the Office 365 package. On the minus side, there are a few features that maybe were even available in the previous whiteboard, but are not currently available. There's still a difference between the web and desktop application, and other minor things like the impossibility of setting an image as background. So if you're on Office 365 and you need limited collaboration, then I think this should be your whiteboard. It fully integrates with Teams, and I think it's really good for a quick brainstorm or a project update. And these were the most known basic whiteboards. The next ones I'm going to review are in a totally different league, as they've been designed with collaboration as a priority. In the middle, there is a jungle of so many whiteboards. Many of them are good, but maybe they're not filling a huge gap. However, if you think that there is a whiteboard that I should be reviewing, please let me know in the comments below. You can check the list of all the whiteboards that I know in the document that you can download for free on my website. So let's now get to the high-end whiteboards, those designed for advanced collaboration. Let's start with Miro, then Mural, and finally Klaxoon in this video here.